stepping outside of his will and stepping into unnecessary guilt. Because we all want to be in our own, that's what the flesh wants, our own will be done. And God's like, no, my will be done out of the fold. But don't let him ruin your relationship that you have with God and what he's doing, right? David, God's like, I got you anointed. I'm going to do some great things with you. And he was ready to throw it all away for a moment of anger. And God's like, no, we're gonna put you back in my will. Sometimes when we try to weave that pattern this way, God's weaving it back. And like I said, when we step into that unnecessary guilt, who have we hurt in the process? How many of you have been like Nabal? 6:39. It says, then Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he was holding a feast in the house, like the feast of a king, right? Here's this guy whose people are just tripping out because they're thinking we're all going to get killed. And Nabal's over here throwing a feast like there's not a care in the world. That's the fool's mentality. I'm just not a care in the world. I'm just going to throw a feast. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. He had that liquid courage in him. He's probably like, yeah, let David show up. Let's see what that. I'm going to get my. What are you going to do, man? You got a bunch of sheep herders. Like, brave man last night, She's telling him. He's like, oh. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal and he died. This man was so scared that he died 10 days later. It's like, what were you thinking, dude? So again, 10 days later, the Lord strikes him and he dies. And that's the thing. David, he didn't have to swing a sword or speak a curse. God took care of it for him. And David recognizes this because in verse 39 it says, blessed be the Lord who has pleaded the cause of my disgrace and has kept his servant from evil. This story, this account isn't just about David being saved from a mistake. It's about God showing us that his justice is better than ours. And God will deal with the wicked, in his time. It might not be on our time or when we think it should be, but he will deal with the problem. It's for people because, we want that payback, right? But God wants purity. See, as humans, when we're wronged or insulted, our gut reaction is revenge. We want people to feel what we felt. And so we want justice on our terms right now. One of my favorite songs by James Brown is Payback, right? The big payback. And it talks about kind of like in this, like, I've been wronged, I want revenge. And he wants it now. But as Christians, we have to understand that God wants purity. He's more interested in the condition of our hearts. He doesn't want us to respond out of rage or pride. He wants us to be holy, to trust him with justice, and to avoid contaminating our lives with bitterness or blood guilt. It's like drinking poison hoping the other person gets sick. That's what vengeance does. It eats at you while you're waiting for someone else to suffer, when truthfully, you're suffering. You just don't see it because you're blinded by anger and pridefulness and selfishness. And the one thing we want too, we want closure, even when things go unresolved. I get it. Closure, it does feel good. But character lasts. And God is more focused on shaping your heart than finishing your script. The script that you have for yourself. He wants your heart to be filled with His love, His will. And closure isn't always going to be a part of that, and we have to be able to accept so we can move on. But that goes to the part of, we want to handle it. I spoke a couple of weeks ago. It's that, I need to do it mentality because no one does it like me. So only I can do it. And here, though, God is saying, let me. Again, this gets at the human tendency to take matters into our own hands, right? That control freak, especially when we're hurt or offended or wronged on a winding road. And you feel like the driver is going too fast. How many of us sat in the passenger, right? And you're seeing somebody drive and you're like, oh my gosh, this person does not know how to drive. Yeah. I remember that story. That was hilarious. But so you instinctively reach for the wheel. Not because you're better at driving, but because you're uncomfortable not being in control. And that's what we do with God. But God is not just a better driver. He knows the destination, the terrain, and what's coming next. So when He says, let me, He's not asking us to be passive. He's asking us to trust that He's already working on our behalf. I mean, what a great God that we serve, that He's already working on our behalf. He's already working it out for us. And the New Testament,